Good afternoon. The first item is notification of Chair and Vice Chair, and full council appointed Councillor Alison Whelan as the Chair of the committee for the 26-27 municipal year, and Councillor Damari Homan as the Vice Chair.
Thank you for that, and I'd like to begin today by welcoming those members of the public or press who have joined us today, either in person or watching via the live stream, to this meeting in the community's Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee at New Shire Hall in Alconbury. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, but could I request that members of the committee and the public turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? I would remind everyone present that this meeting will be live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Council's website. The meeting will be adjourned every 2 hours for a short comfort break. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will leave the room by the side doors and use the external fire exit to the assembly point in the car park. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome the new Executive Director of Place and Sustainability, Graham Kane, who sat on my left here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to item 2, apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Would the Democratic Services Officer report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. There are apologies from Councillor Hoy, and Councillor Keane is here as a sub.
Thank you for that. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Okay. See no indications, so we'll move on to item 3, which is the minutes. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the last committee meeting, which was held on the 26th of February 2026 as a correct record. Can I ask whether any member disagrees with the accuracy of these minutes? I see no indication, so on that basis, I assume we are happy then to approve the minutes as written. Thank you. Public questions and petitions. We have not received any public questions or petitions for today's meeting. So we'll move on to the next item. I'm going to exercise my discretion as chair and take the Crisis and Resilience Fund item first this afternoon. This is a key decision and it will be presented by the Head of Communities, Jill Buckingham, along with the Anti-Poverty Strategic Lead, Nikita Vanterpool, and the Service Manager for Integration and Cohesion, Ruth Walters. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to be headlining. Thank you. Members, the paper we're presenting to committee today is unusually lengthy and detailed as we share the plans for the delivery of a preventative first approach to the Crisis and Resilience Fund in Cambridgeshire. This paper also marks a significant milestone in delivering against the recommendations from the Cambridgeshire Poverty Strategy Commission. Section 2 of the paper provides the recent context and background, including decisions already made. The main body of the paper outlines plans for Cambridgeshire to adopt a preventative first approach for the fund with the aim to build individual and community resilience whilst providing a safety net for residents who experience financial shock. Central Government's approach and ambition for the National Crisis and Resilience Fund aligns well with the recommendations from our local Poverty Strategy Commission. When Central Government launched the fund, Cambridgeshire was already well placed with an evidence base to inform local priorities provided by the Commission, a multi-agency partnership in the form of the Delivery Group, and an agreed collaborative approach to design and deliver a new offer for Cambridgeshire. All of the plans included in this paper have been tested against both the national requirements and the local recommendations. The work that sits behind this paper has been significant. Nikita, as the Anti-Poverty Strategic Lead, has led the work, which has included extensive and meaningful consultation and co-production with partner agencies who deliver frontline support to our residents who are experiencing poverty. Ruth has been leading on the planned procurement of the new crisis payment scheme. Nikita and Ruth have been supported by a small team, all of whom are in person here today to watch you debate. Committee has already approved one decision, which has resulted in Cambridgeshire being the first and currently only county council to procure the low-income family tracker. Working collaboratively with district and city colleagues on LIFT and with the wider partnership of voluntary and community sector organisations on all other aspects of the delivery model for year one has ensured that the proposals and plans are genuinely co-produced with the hope that the Poverty Commission, which was the hope of the Poverty Commission, and it prepares us well for LGR. Nikita and Ruth will shortly talk you through today's 3 key decisions. But before I hand over to them, I would like to bring members' attention to section 6 of the paper, which focuses on children and families, and also appendix 2, the letter from the DWP in response to the recent council motion. The letter acknowledges the strength of feeling expressed by council around the benefits of the blanket provision of vouchers funded by the previous Household Support Fund, and also recognises concern that moving away from a universal offer may create challenges for some families. The letter outlines what central government expects councils to do to mitigate these impacts, and also what other policies and initiatives central government has put in place to tackle child poverty. The letter further provides assurance that our approach is in line with published guidance, including the plans outlined in section 6 of the paper to mitigate the impact of the ending of the blanket voucher scheme. I will now pass over to Ruth, who will introduce the first key decision, the procurement of a crisis payment scheme.
Whilst we recognise that this fund is strongly focused on resilience, we appreciate that there is absolutely still a need for crisis support to be available to our residents who are facing financial shock. Therefore, the first key decision is to seek agreement to procure a crisis payment scheme. The proposed crisis payment scheme is a core element of the Crisis and Resilience Fund and is designed to provide timely, targeted support to residents experiencing immediate financial shock. In line with national guidance, the scheme will adopt a cash first but not cash only approach and will operate primarily through an application-based model, ensuring that support is flexible and responsive to individual circumstances. A key part of this scheme, however, will be about ensuring that residents who access it can also access the necessary resilience support. So I'll now pass over to Nikita, who can tell us a bit more about this.
Thank you, Ruth. So yeah, I think what's really exciting about the Crisis and Resilience Fund is it presents us an opportunity to think about what now. So once a resident has received that crisis support, where do they go next? So this fund and the proposals set out in the paper enable the immediate needs to be addressed, as Ruth has set out, but to also ensure that there is effective and appropriate capacity to continue to support and build that resilience. Supporting people to maximise their income, make their money work as hard as possible for them, linking them into other employment opportunities and giving them the tools to manage a future crisis or financial shock. The next 2 key decisions in the committee paper are investments into local provision that ensures there is more capacity, both for those in financial shock, but also for any low-income household looking for advice and support. The first is a continuation of the work of Citizens Advice, who have been delivering an Income Max project since 2023. This work helps residents to increase their financial stability, better manage their budgets, and ensure they are accessing all of the benefits they are eligible for. Through the Crisis and Resilience Fund, we're seeking to continue this project for the next 2 years, a project last year which secured more than £3 million of additional income for over 3,000 residents in Cambridgeshire. The next key decision recognises the diversity of our county and our communities. We're seeking to invest in community outreach capacity to ensure that resilience capacity is accessible for everyone. For example, ensuring we have capacity that can be accessed for those that are rurally isolated or digitally excluded. This funding would enable a consortium of organisations to work together across the county to provide that specialist community-based support in spaces that work for our residents, truly meeting them where they are. This was a key element of the Poverty Commission, recognising the importance of trusted environments where people can access that support that they most need. As set out in the paper, these key decisions are supported by multiple other strands of resilience work and community coordination, all of which work towards longer-term sustainable change for all of our residents. So we're happy to take any questions you have today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Members, open to you for questions. Very quiet. Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for this really comprehensive report and all the work that has gone in from officers and, of course, the Poverty Commission, which started, it seems like many years ago now, all the beginning of the work. So it's really good to see some of the recommendations being implemented. I'm not going to reiterate all the various debates we had at full council and otherwise on this, because I think some choices were made. We have a paper in front of us and we need to see the paper on its merits and ask the questions as to what is being proposed, and judge what the proposal is in front of us. I do welcome this multi-year fund from government. I really hope this will enable the focus on prevention and really build on some of the excellent work already done by the Council on Income Maximization. I wanted to speak a little bit about and ask a question around 6.5. I do welcome that families currently in receipt of the holiday vouchers will be a priority for the LIFT, using the LIFT service, and actually receive a targeted offer of personalized support. I think it's a very welcome intervention. I would like to hear a bit more as to like how does that work in practice in terms of like the data, how you'd identify those families. Do you already have presumably a list of all of them, and what would this personalized offer involve? Because of course in some cases where appropriate you could still, vouchers can still be issued, but of course in other circumstances maybe a different offer of support could be more suitable. One of the questions I had coming from some residents which were supported in the past by the previous fund is around crisis payments, because overall when we look at the breakdown, around a third of the funding actually goes on the crisis payments, and of course the rest of the funding goes on other welcome interventions. But the question is it going to be sufficient? Because we know that crisis demand and demand for crisis payments is particularly high. So just a general question, are we confident that allocating about a third would be sufficient? And yeah, how effective do we think LIFT would be? Of course, looking at the numbers, it seemed quite an expensive service. I know there's a lot of thinking that went into that. And being the first county council implementing this, I know there's no direct comparison, but I guess maybe for a future briefing or note, it'll be very interesting to see how effective that service is in terms of value for money provided. So I'll leave with those ones first. Thank you.
So if I start initially around the kind of how we'll support those families. So we're doing a lot of work with our education colleagues at the moment in terms of building that kind of pool of resources so that we can get communication out to those families about what is available in their local area, both in terms of the kind of broader county provision through the Crisis and Resilience Fund, but also what local food provision exists within your communities, whether that be a social supermarket, community pantry, that kind of thing. So kind of our communities colleagues, ourselves and education are working really closely to make sure that kind of really targeted comms goes out to families, making them aware of what support is available, but also how they can access it. Another kind of point linked to that as well is around the use of LIFT, as you say. I think LIFT presents us a really great opportunity to, with education, we know people that are already eligible for free school meals and accessing it and how to reach them. LIFT presents us with an opportunity to find those families that might be eligible, but we haven't yet been able to kind of reach them. And through LIFT, we can therefore kind of make that direct contact and kind of invite them to kind of be aware of that eligibility for free school meals, but also to again be aware of that support that is available to them in their local area. So I think what we're keen to do is make sure that the communication that goes out to families over the next few weeks, kind of leading up to the end of term, and as we start in the next academic year, is really tailored to their local area and making it really clear about what support is there, because the Poverty Commission highlighted that so much support is out there, but people often just don't know where to start. And I think that community outreach capacity allows that support to be a lot more visible within communities, whether that's in library spaces, food banks, kind of those trusted community areas, so that people can kind of see that visibility.
I'll tackle the is a third enough bit of the I mean, who knows? You know, it could be that you never have enough money to respond to crisis. We did do some benchmarking. We looked at another 17 different local authorities to see how we compared, because obviously this is brand new and we wanted to sort of test out whether our thinking was similar. There is some variety across the country, as you might expect, but then the funding formula is such that it's weighted towards disadvantage and deprivation, as you'd expect. So some have a lot more. We're at the much lowest end of allocation per capita. We've worked on the assumption that we've got the money that's set aside now, and we can review and change things. There's always some room for flex from the delivery plan to and if more money becomes available, the oil, for example, that came along, but there could be other money that comes along, or we underspend in another area, we can redirect it, and we just have to have a conversation with the DWP in that case. We've also doing a bit of a design and build, really. The first 6 months, first year is a bit of a test. And then we'll see how that goes. And if we need to put more into that end, then we can. But obviously, there's an opportunity because we've got to lose something else. The other thing really to say is that the way that we're designing the procurement is that we have that flexibility. So what we're going to be procuring, pure procurement is for the system, and then we can flex on the amount of money that they distribute. So we'll be able to respond to need. Ruth, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, just to give a bit more context on the oil that Jill mentioned. So as you may know, in March, we received an additional £700,000 from central government for low-income households who use heating oil, and that was delivered through the Crisis and Resilience Fund. So as Jill said, we are building that into the crisis payment scheme procurement to ensure that if under any circumstances we receive additional funding, that we do have the capacity in place to be able to deliver that to our residents.
And just finally, sorry, I've just had an extra thought about Lift, how we're going to use that. Lift will be able to identify we know how many households use heating oil. We know how many households we have on benefits who would be eligible to access that support. What we don't have until we have Lift is those two different data sets put together, but we will have that. We've already got it in South Cambs, and we will have it for the entire county, and then we'll be able to target the comms to them to say, you are eligible for this support, please let us help you. So.
Thank you for that response, and I would just add that the size of the fund that we have, 5.3 million plus 700,000 for the heating oil, 6 million, is just a tiny bit. I did a little bit of research, and the suggestion is that to deal with the poverty issues that we have would require £60 million a year, adding at least £60 million a year, adding to the incomes of those who are in the most difficult position. We do not have that money. So the work that is being done here, which effectively acts as a multiplier, and what we will see is many multiples of that money appearing with people by making sure that we can actually target them to the right source, is actually wonderful to see. Just in terms of Lift, obviously that relies upon our partners in the districts getting on board staff. Can you update us on where they are with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I'm actually also joined, Chris Riches from South Cambs is here this afternoon, who is supporting in the rollout of Lift across the county. It's a really exciting piece of work that's happening, and I think the work in South Cambs has really proven the value of what this tool can provide. I think just kind of annually for South Cambs, I think they've found over £700,000 worth of kind of additional income for people, which has a lifetime value of over £6 million. So we expect to see numbers like that, if not even greater, across the rest of our districts. So what's happening at the moment is all of the districts are working really hard to firstly recruit a dedicated Lift officer to make sure we have the capacity to run these campaigns and do this work, but also to build those dashboards, all of which is happening as we speak, with the plan that hopefully the kind of county-wide campaigns will start to happen towards the end of the summer period. So yeah, thank you to Chris for all of his work with the districts over the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. Councillor Tong.
Hello. Firstly, I'd like to thank officers for all their work on this. You can see how much energy has gone into this document, and it's really, really interesting to read. I will also say I think Lift is quite pricey, but it's an absolutely fantastic expense. Like, it's kind of magical, the extent to which we can use it. So it's really, really, really good. And yeah, I'm very excited to see how far we can stretch it to do the most good in the county. What I wanted to note was, well, I'll call you to the exact point, 6.5, it's on page 30. And it notes that you're going to do outreach to families, eligible for but not currently registered for free school meals. One thing I wanted to ask is why we're not simply auto-enrolling those families for free school meals, because it's something a lot of other councils have managed to do. What was the reasoning behind this?
Thank you. So we're actually working with education colleagues at the moment to hopefully introduce auto-enrolment at the beginning of the next academic year. So prior to LIFT and that platform being available, to do something like that with our district councils would have been incredibly difficult. But LIFT really kind of, I wouldn't say it makes it a completely easy process, but it definitely helps us in kind of doing that more effectively. So we're just working up the detail with our education colleagues at the moment with a view that that kind of engagement and work with schools will happen as soon as possible. But that is absolutely our intention with the platform to do that.
I'm really delighted to hear that. I will say, when I read the document and that wasn't specified, I was a little disappointed, because I feel that's such an easy win for the authority and it will do so much good that it just feels like a little bit of a weird oversight. So glad to know that that's planned.
Yes, that's always been in our sort of intentions, is to investigate the way, and certainly the Vice Chair and myself and the team have actually talked about this on many occasions. It's just actually getting to that point of being able to do all of these things. And, you know, again, as we keep saying, LIFT is just opening up so many doors to us in a different way. Councillor Seif.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Excellent report and good news, pretty well all round, but I did want to question one particular aspect of income maximisation, because I think you mentioned a figure that you leveraged about £3 million. I may have misheard. I don't know if it's in the report, which in a way doesn't seem very high leverage compared to the for example, the cost in this current year of about 800,000. Now, I'm not decrying income maximisation. It's very important, but I just wanted your view. Was that was what you would have targeted? Would you expect it to be more? Will this particular programme produce more than that? And perhaps more importantly, do we have evidence that once people are back on their feet, as it were, which may be helped by this process, do they become independent, or is it a bit of an ongoing process?
Good question. The cost of the income maximisation service to us is £400,000 a year. So the 800,000 is for 2 years, and that employs 8 people. Who the income max workers, 4 of them work for rural CAB and 4 work for city and south. So we have full county coverage. The greater gains are people who are often not claiming benefits, and then you get people that I think everybody walks away with more. But so we do the greater gains, and that's what we count in terms of the income maximisation, is any additional benefits, etc. But then they also pass them on to debt workers to look at their debts again. They do other things as well, that looking at how their outgoings, getting them onto social tariffs, blah 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 blah. You know, there's lots of different stages to it. Very intensive work. And yeah, but I think that is what we might expect in terms of return, because of the intensity of the work. But I'll pass you over to Nikita, who might want to add to that.
Yeah, so I guess just to kind of add a bit more in terms of the second question about kind of what happens for these individuals, I think what's really powerful about the Income Max project is the kind of stories that come out of that work, and how kind of potentially unlocking one benefit for a resident has completely changed their kind of way they're able to live their lives. However, there is some work that we're just starting with public health around kind of building an evaluation framework around all of this work, to make sure that we can really understand what happens after they've kind of gone through this journey, gone through this service. Are they equipped in the future to kind of meet any needs that they have? So we're working with public health at the moment to kind of build that impact study, to make sure that we're really questioning and ensuring that throughout the kind of delivery of the Crisis and Resilience Fund, we're constantly asking that question of ourselves of, are we having the kind of long-term impact that we're working towards?
Thank you very much. I think that's something that I would be personally quite interested to see some more. Obviously not, it will be more generalised, but I think the stories accompanying these sorts of reports are very useful to us. And that would be helpful if you are compiling such a report. It was forwarded to us. I don't know whether you'd agree, Chair.
So I think as we go through this process, we will have a series of KPIs which will be reported back to this committee. We will then start to see this, because obviously what we need to do is ensure that we are getting the best value for money that we can out of what little amount of money that we actually have to do this work. And I think we have to sort of look and actually be praising the team for the simple fact that they have actually managed to achieve so much with so little. We now need to see that delivered, and seeing reported back what those KPIs are, along with one or two of those personal stories, would actually be, bring to life what those KPI means. And I'm sure we have all of that in hand for future meetings. That will also give us the opportunity to deal with some of the other questions that we've had, which is, have we got the balance right? Have we got the the situation right? We don't know until we actually get there. We're starting from a nil place. So this is really important. So, members, any other questions? Any other things? Councillor Damari Homan.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just a massive thanks to all the team for all their hard work. I mean, the combined programme that we've got here is brilliant. As Councillor Whelan says, we have limited resources, but we are really making the most of them here. I'm so excited to see LIFT in action across the county as well. I was very grateful to Chris for spending some time with me, showing me the back end of LIFT at South Cambs. It's a fascinating piece of software. The level of depth it goes into and the ability to identify those most in need, in crisis, those who are at risk. We are going to be very well placed across all of our districts to be supporting our residents. And yeah, so it's been an awful lot of work, and it is so greatly appreciated, because we are going to make a difference to a lot of people's lives with this programme. I just wanted to ask a quick question, reflecting on what was said at the last full council about ensuring that the money we're spending is spent properly and we're getting value for money, in particular where we are giving money to outside organisations, be it the community hubs or through the voluntary and charity sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very excited about LIFT as well, so thank you very much. There's a great deal of evidence out there around the return on investment, both financially and socially, in terms of preventative work. There's been some local work as well, and it's you never quite know what you're preventing, of course, so it is always difficult to put a figure on it, but the life-changing nature of being able to support people when they need it most is significant. If I can give you one example of the work that happened last year that we intend to expand upon this year, is that towards the end of the Household Support Fund, we could see which way it was going. We could see that it was opening up from, rather than just being about cost of living payments, it became start thinking about preventative stuff, start thinking about resilience, and we thought brilliant. And I think that the local authorities around the country gave a collective sigh of great, let's be able to do this piece of work. And we were able to be a bit more flexible, and our domestic abuse sexual violence service had a budget that they managed themselves, so that rather than just giving tiny amounts to everybody, they had a significant amount that they could support women and usually women with children fleeing domestic abuse, setting up home with nothing. And whereas previously they may have just got like one white good or 100 quid, we were able to say, right, what are the essentials? And there is a list of things. Your children need beds. You need a bed. You do need white goods. You do need a carpet at least here, or flooring here, or curtains. And we were able to make a significant difference. It was a really good forerunner, and there's a huge amount of evidence around domestic abuse, and the when families are at their greatest risk of returning is because the practicalities of setting up is so daunting and so impossible that they think, my children haven't got a bed to sleep on, we haven't been able to cook, we'd better go back, and that's when they're at greatest risk. So we know that there's a huge amount of evidence out there that this really does work and it really is value for money.
Thank you for that. I have to say that, you know, the words that you're actually using there about the cross-working between DASV and yourselves is really refreshing to hear. I think it is such an important thing. Most people, fortunately, will never experience those kind of situations. But when you do and you find yourself unable to do anything, unable to go anywhere, it just shows the value we can add, not just to one group of people, but to lots of lots of different people who are really struggling. So thank you for that. Members, any other points? Councillor Tong.
Apologies, this is a bit of a summary, but also one final question. So the reason I'm particularly excited about auto enrollment for free school meals is because that potential to unlock extra pupil premium funding for schools, assuming we are about where the national average is, I think we're unlocking up to £4 million for schools across the county in pupil premium funding. And that's such an exciting thing. That's giving children a real chance at getting a proper education that they deserve. However, this was all based on statistics I gathered last year. And I think the key thing is getting children those free school meals. Could you remind me exactly how many children who are eligible are estimated to be not collecting their free school meals? Because I believe it was several thousand, and that was where this prediction came from. But it would be good to know exactly how many children, just because I think that's something the council should really be celebrating. And it really emphasizes the achievement we're hopefully making today.
Thank you. We know that we've got currently 22,000 children eligible for free school meals, and the best estimate, because obviously you don't know what you don't know, is there's probably 10% more out there who are not currently in receipt of free school meals. And as you say, that also means schools aren't receipt of pupil premium. And Nikita's going to add.
Yeah, so I can add a bit more to that in terms of we ran a pilot in South Cambs using the LIFT platform to kind of explore that a bit further to see how many more children we might be able to get registered for free school meals using that. And during that pilot, we found around 81 more children were registered for free school meals as part of that pilot. There are no doubt more. So I think we're taking that learning from that pilot to think about how we roll out across the county, but also how we kind of do even more with that. I think once the dashboards are built across all of the districts, we'll have a much better view of that. So we're working really closely with education. So very happy to kind of bring that back once we kind of have those exact numbers. But I think the pilot in South Cambs was a really helpful indication of what opportunity there is to find more of those children and get them registered.
Fantastic. And that matches the numbers that I was still using, which was, I thought it was around 11%, so 10%. And with 22,000 eligible children, that means there's likely thousands of children who should be getting this that just unfortunately aren't because they don't know they deserve it. And not only are we getting them those meals, we're also getting that extra funding for schools, which is so important at this difficult moment.
I think it is important, and it's the reason why we are going down this route. But it also highlights that additional money for schools is not necessarily going to benefit the councils or the council services in any way whatsoever. It's going to benefit the wider community, and it shows the importance that this is not just about what is happening in the council. This is about the wider community. It is about people in general, and that is far, far more important. Members, any other questions? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, it's really wonderful to see this coming through. And I know there's been a lot of debate and it's been a lot of hard work into it. So just to say thank you for the work you've done. And I'm pleased to see that this has been fought for and pushed through, and that the money being used will be used to support people across Cambridgeshire. So just a thank you to yourselves.
Right, I've seen no other indications to speak. So we have a series of recommendations ahead of us. Are you happy for me to just ask for your approval for all of the recommendations, or would you like me to read out each of the recommendations individually? Okay, in which case I will ask if I can have approval for recommendations A, B, C, D, and E in the papers. All those in favour? Okay, I think that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. That is a really important piece of work. And can I just say to all three of you and everyone else who's involved in this, thank you so much for the work that you've actually done. This really is appreciated. And I think that we are going to hopefully be seeing back here some really, really positive stories of what has actually happened. Thank you. Okay, so next item is Connect to Work procurement. We're going back to the first item on the agenda. This is going to be presented by the Connect to Work programme lead, Rachel Carpenter. Welcome, Rachel. Welcome to your first meeting, and let's give you a hard time, shall we?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. This paper seeks approval to commence the procurement of delivery partners for the Connect to Work programme. As members will be aware, Cambridgeshire County Council has successfully secured the role of prime contractor for Connect to Work across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. This is a significant achievement for the council and brings up to 12.3 million of external investment to the region over the next 4 years to support residents with disabilities, long-term health conditions and other complex barriers into sustainable employment. The programme is funded by the Department for Work and Pensions through the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, which acts as the accountable body for the programme locally. As prime contractor, Cambridgeshire County Council is responsible for coordinating and managing the delivery across the region and ensuring that programme outcomes, contractual requirements and quality standards are achieved. Whilst the council is the prime contractor, our successful bid was built around a partnership model. The programme requires the delivery of specialist supported employment approaches, including individual placement support and the supported employment quality framework, and therefore relies on experienced delivery organisations with the skills, workforce capacity and local networks needed to support residents into work. The purpose of this procurement is to establish those longer-term delivery arrangements. Through this process, we will seek to appoint a range of specialist providers capable of delivering high-quality services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, ensuring residents can support regardless of where they live and we have sufficient capacity to meet the ambitious targets set by the government and the Combined Authority. I would also like to assure members that we are working closely with the Council's procurement team throughout this process. Procurement colleagues have been engaged from the outset to help shape the procurement approach, ensure compliance with procurement legislation and the Council's contract procedure rules and wider governance requirements, and to support the development of a procurement model that secures both value for money and high quality delivery. The proposed approach has been designed to ensure a fair, transparent and compliant process while also enabling participation from specialist providers, voluntary and community sector organisations and local delivery partners who will be critical to the success of the programme. Members should note that because of the challenging mobilisation timescales attached to the national programme, the Council has already approved the use of waivers for a small number of key providers. This has enabled essential mobilisation activity to begin whilst the formal procurement process is undertaken. The procurement before you today is therefore about putting in place the longer-term contractual arrangements required to support delivery through to 2030. The proposed contracts have an estimated value up to 7 million over the life of the programme and will operate on a cost reimbursement basis. This means providers will only be paid for evidenced and approved expenditure supported by robust financial monitoring, contract management and performance oversight arrangements. As prime contractor, the council will be responsible for managing delivery, performance and assuring quality and fidelity standards and ensuring that public funding is used appropriately and delivers the required outcomes. Ultimately, this procurement is a critical step in enabling the successful delivery of Connect to Work. It will allow us to bring together the right mix of specialist providers, establish strong governance and accountability arrangements, and maximise the opportunities to support some of our most disadvantaged residents into sustainable employment, whilst contributing to wider priorities around health, independence, financial resilience, and inclusive economic growth. The recommendations before members today are therefore, firstly, to approve the procurement of organisations to deliver supported employment provision for Connect to Work, and secondly, to delegate authority for awarding and executing contracts for the provision of Connect to Work to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Community's Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Members, so Councillor Levine.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I take it that this is local government reorganisation proof?
Yes, it has been agreed and it is detailed in the contract that we're drawing up around ensuring that it is LGR proof, yes.
Sorry.
Just a quick question. I heard you mention that you've got some performance measures in there against the contractor. If they don't perform as well as you expect, have you got some break clauses in your contract so you can push them out?
Yes, there will be some exit clauses. There will be a whole raft of performance through the contractual procedure guidance that the council issues. Yeah, we will make sure that they're in place.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So we're already working with some providers through the waivers, but we're also procuring other people. How do we make sure that they have the same chance to win if they're not already working with us? It seems slightly odd that you'd have relationships and then do procurement.
Yes, we will be able to, well, all of our existing delivery partners who've joined us will have to procure a bid in for the procurement. So it's not a given that they will continue with us. Those providers that we're currently working with are already in contract with us through Adult Skills. So we were able to offer them waivers to get us started to meet the tight timescales, but they will all have to bid in, and so everyone will have a fair opportunity to get the contract for the remainder of that we have the contract.
Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, the national program, and I really welcome like any more and additional funding into getting people back into work, but of course we have like a range of programs across the area, and I would love for it to be like branded as one thing, because of course we have, you know, now Connecting to Work, we had Support into Work, Work Well, Camp Skills, some specific courses, specific youth programs. So the question is like, how can we actually ensure we don't duplicate any of the work from the existing programs, and what does this program add in addition? How does it complement existing work streams? And also from a resident perspective, how can we ensure that people are not confused or overwhelmed with the various source of support and actually know which program is the best suited for them and their circumstances? Because in this one, I know you're targeting specific groups and it's a bit more targeted in that way. So that's the question, how do we ensure that actually we provide good value for money by not duplicating existing services? Thank you.
Yep. So as one of our delivery partners is CPSL Mind, who are already delivering the Workwell contract across some areas of Cambridgeshire already. And we are in close communication with the other Workwell providers, as well as understanding and learning about the other programs that are out there. We will build relationships with those providers. The DWP have also produced some guidance, which I'd be happy to share, that talks about all the different programs that are out there and how Connect to Work fits in with that delivery. I think that's it was really helpful to us to understand those connections and how we're going to work together. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm conscious that this was probably put together before we received the Milburn report, and we've only received part one of that yet, not the recommendations. But the DWP guidance on this does refer to certain categories of young people who might be eligible, care leavers and those with care experience, people involved or at risk of being involved in serious violence, and says that in some circumstances 16 and 17-year-olds may also be eligible. I just wonder to what extent those delivering this will be focusing on those categories of young people, bearing in mind that we will see some further recommendations from the Milburn report coming shortly. Will that be taken on board?
Yes, so yes, we're aware that there are a long list of other categories of participants that we can focus on. So each of our delivery partners will receive a set of targets, which will give a sort of balance across each of those groups. So again, I think working with our other partners and delivery providers out there who are working with young people, we will make sure that we build in the requirements, further requirements as they become apparent. But yeah, concentrate on the list of people. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Going to bring in Officer at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. Just to link your question to wider delivery to young people as well. So we are aware of the Milburn report, and Tom, who is the head of Cambridgeshire Skills, who's on annual leave this week, just before he went away, he started to do a piece of analysis for us as a council around what that interim report looks like as we look towards the autumn and the recommendations that will obviously follow. One thing that we have consciously done as a council is position, and you may recall previous papers here, the commissioning of the Youth Guarantee Trailblazer funding within Cambridgeshire Skills. So it sits right alongside the work that Rachel is leading and reporting into Tom, and Tom is overseeing all of our Youth Guarantee Trailblazer across children's services as well. So we've got that connection across the council. That means that we can quite neatly pull in those target groups of young people where they're eligible into Connect Work as well. So I hope that provides a little further reassurance on our approach.
Thank you very much for that, Lisa. Members, any other? Councillor Damery-Holman.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Rachel. It's great to have you with us. Really looking forward to seeing this work get underway after we received the money previously. I'd also just like to note, actually, in conversations with the Combined Authority regarding skills, they've been very complimentary of the work of this council, which is great to hear. And yeah, so just on this matter itself, I appreciate we've already discussed LGR a little bit with regard to the contracts with the service providers. But and forgive me if I'm forgetting something from when we accepted the money from the Combined Authority, would I be right in thinking that whatever new unitary authorities came forward, they would then take that role of prime contractor, but carry on the contracts that we as a county council have set in place?
Yes, that's as I understand it. I shall defer to Lisa.
Yeah, that's correct. It may well be that we looked to a hosting authority arrangement, but this is it's a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Connect to Work programme, and the money is there because it's secured through the CPCA.
Thank you very much for that. Members, any other questions or comments on here? In which case, oh, sorry, Councillor Tong.
I have no questions. I think the report's really good, but I do just want to express my support for this initiative. I think it's fantastic that we're working to try and support people getting back into work.
Thank you for that. That saves me saying it. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Right, we are being asked to approve the procurement of organisations to deliver supported employment provision for Connect to Work and delegate authority to the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Community Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee to award and execute contracts for the provision of Connect to Work. Are we happy to do so? Those in favour? Anyone against? That's lovely. I like unanimous decisions, and hopefully haven't given you too much of a hard time on your first occasion here. Rachel, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
In which case, we will now move on to item 7, which is the final key decision today, and it's on the Future Library Service Strategy 26 to 29, which will be presented by the Head of Libraries, Archives and Culture, Gary Porter, and Library Support Manager, Andrew Stota. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. If I can hand over to you.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you for that welcome. So, the Future Library Service Strategy sets out the vision, priorities, and delivery framework for Cambridgeshire Libraries over the period 2026-29. And that end date was chosen to provide a strategic and service continuity over the LGR period. Strategy encapsulates the resourcing, breadth, scale, and reach of the library service through static libraries, mobiles, and digital, rooting it in both the national and a local context. Strategy is underpinned by a new vision, enriching lives through knowledge, culture, and connection. It'll build on a strong foundation of existing partnerships and cultivates new ones. By working closely with a diverse range of partners across sectors and communities, we can unlock potential, share resources and expertise, and deliver the best outcomes for the people that we serve. 4 areas of focus have been identified. Firstly, libraries at the heart of local communities. This is about positioning libraries as a gateway to public services for the council and for wider partners, enabling residents to access information, advice, and support in one trusted, welcoming space. Secondly, reviewing the library estate. This is about optimizing the use of the library network, 33 static libraries and 3 mobiles, making the most of these assets which sit at the heart of communities. The work also includes aligning with the library services policy to plan for new libraries in emerging communities and assessing existing sites for suitability, accessibility, and sustainability. So our goal is to create modern, flexible spaces that support long-term service delivery for all services across the County Council. This work stream is already benefiting, of course, from the Library Plus investment programme, which continues to roll out, improving our library spaces and increasing the ways in which they can be used more flexibly. Thirdly, place-based working, responsive to local need. This includes working with our communities team to target priority groups in areas of greatest need and delivering tailored services that reflect local priorities and the lived experience. We will build on our partnership with Public Health to develop and deliver health-focused initiatives in libraries, responding to local needs. For example, the new blood pressure monitor lending service, which has just gone live. And then finally, supporting children and families. So libraries have always played a central role in supporting children's development and learning from birth through to adulthood. Libraries contribute to Best Start in Life by championing literacy, school readiness, and lifelong learning. Through high-quality resources, programs, and partnerships, libraries will help children and families thrive. The Summer Reading Challenge, which launches in July, is a great example of this. So a delivery plan has been developed, specifying the actions the service will take against these priority areas. Strategy is also framed by the County Council's corporate ambitions and vision, a healthy, fair and sustainable Cambridgeshire, and articulates the many ways in which the library service can deliver against these priorities. Strategy should be seen through this wider lens and not just one which is library service specific. Accordingly, the strategy has been developed not in isolation. The services work with colleagues across the council, in addition to public input through our customer impact survey. Strategy also contains an updated library service levels policy, which is designed to inform, guide, and provide an effective basis for planning or delivering the service to ensure that the council can respond to both current needs and future growth in a consistent and strategic way. To conclude, the strategy sets out to be a clear, ambitious roadmap for the future of the library service, ensuring that they remain vibrant, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of our growing communities. By aligning with national best practice, statutory obligations, and the Council's corporate ambitions, we will deliver a service that champions literacy, digital inclusion, and cultural enrichment, whilst also supporting health, well-being, and social connections. Underpinning the strategy, of course, is working with colleagues across the Council and partnerships in health, education, and community services, ensuring that libraries are places of learning and creativity, as well as delivering corporate-wide priorities, particularly in relation to for a healthy, fair, and sustainable Cambridgeshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gary. I mean, obviously, I see libraries as being an incredibly important part of what the council offers. And obviously, I just want to clarify here, adoption of the strategy doesn't in itself approve any library closures or relocations, but it's about maximising the use of the spaces that we actually have. We talked earlier, we've just approved the CRF plan, and obviously that's important there. We've talked about other things, the public health's offering, and obviously we've got things like the Library Presents going on. There is so much happening in our libraries. And this strategy is about making sure that we are maximising the use of those spaces. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give clarity around that. So I think you're referring perhaps to the reviewing the library estate section. So reviewing does not mean sort of downsizing or rationalising. It really is about looking at that estate that we currently have and optimising it as a community asset, at the heart of communities, building on what we currently have, not reduction.
Which is wonderful to hear. Councillor Seif.
Thank you, Chair. Well, again, a very, if I may say, a very ambitious programme development over 3 years. I'm very much in support of generally the programme, and indeed, when we come to the debate, I would like to make a statement. But in the meantime, can I just ask one pertinent question? Ambitious programme. Does the existing estate have the facilities to do what is being proposed here, or will it take more capital spend or reorganisation or rejigging of the estate in order to achieve that programme? And in particular, and I just wonder whether I should have declared my non-pecuniary interest, because I'm chair of the Library Presents. And of course, we talk about this quite a lot. And there is a very, very ambitious programme which is developing of cultural events taking place in libraries. So the question really is, can they continue to take place with the existing facilities? Are other libraries not being able to join in with that programme because they don't have those facilities? But we would like to see them. Sorry, a very long question, which I didn't really intend. It's about, do we have the facilities to achieve the plan that you've put forward?
I think my colleague Andrew will want to come on this, I'm sure, because he's leading the capital investment programme. But so just to remind colleagues that the 1.3 million Library Plus investment programme, which is well underway now and probably about 80% complete, is around building in flexibility into those spaces to assure that they can be sort of reconfigured to host multiple events, including the Library Presents. And when we develop new libraries, so Darwin Green will be coming on stream, for instance, Campbell and the recent refit there, we're designing in flexibility for multiple uses rather than them being kind of very rigid structures. So we're using the resources that we have. And of course, I mean, Andrew may wish to add to this. Obviously, we're benefiting from Section 106 developer funding, which allows us to employ best practice in terms of developing new sites. But I don't know if you want to come in, Andrew.
Yeah, just very similar, that the element that we're hoping you'll adopt really does help us with setting out what we charge developers for growth. So I'm thinking an area like Sawtry, which is due to double in size. Currently, I'd say doesn't have the right library size, but as that doubles, this adoption will allow us to claim funding towards growing that library, looking at alternative venues. So it's about, The 1.3 in particular, the Library Plus, has helped us where maybe things haven't gone quite right with developer funding. So the key one would be Yaxley. We were able to add a public toilet. The area's seen loads of growth, but it's all fallen on the Peterborough side of the border, so we didn't get the developer funding. And this sort of the Library Plus funding was able to balance that, that out and give us that chance to develop the sites to meet needs.
It's a very important aspect that we have to remember. Housing development is expected to grow substantially over the next few years. And again, we need the facilities. Now, you will get, as you say, you should be able to achieve Section 106 funding to support that. Just making sure you get enough of that funding.
Thank you. Lisa, did you want to come in? Did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to add to that as well, what's underpinning the strategy, as Gary referenced in some of his opening, is things like our work across into children's services, where it's Best Start in Life and Family Hubs. And some of those programmes like Family Hubs come with some money attached to them as well. So by working collectively as a council, we're able to make our libraries work harder for us. And the other bit for me that we've spoken about and we're really keen to continue to develop is the amount of our libraries that aren't open full time, or that we could expand opening more into the evenings, weekends, for example. And what the strategy is really pushing is also us working with our community groups and voluntary organisations around how they can support us to do more of that, so that we have libraries open for longer in our communities.
Thank you, and hopefully my voice will hold out. Councillor Kane.
Hi, this is a subject I'm really passionate about, so I'm going to get on my soapbox, so apologies. And I think the libraries in Cambridge is something we should be really proud of, and I love this strategy. I think it's great. I last year was able to go to St Neots and watch the Summer Reading Challenge and the impact that had on the school children. And it was just seeing how proud they were with the number of books that they'd read, but also how the library staff there didn't just use this as a Summer Reading Challenge, but they then put in some science activities. And I think really the libraries as a community space is a really important thing, because I see firsthand how that happens in St Neots. So I see it being used by the crochet group, another love of mine, and I really see how it's really bedded in. I mean, personally, when I look at your income, I contribute to that because I'm always overdue charges. So, you know, I've contributed to some of those overdue charges. I borrow lots of the books. I really, really utilize these services. And I really commend you for everything you're doing, because I think this is a really, really good thing. I think I know that I'm personally going out and really pushing to all my parishes and residents about getting children involved in that, because some of the children that I saw, I know haven't picked up a book before, but doing the reading challenge really unlocked reading to them. And I think when we do have a literacy sort of issue across the country, I think that's a really important thing. I also really like the aspect of the things like working with public health. Another thing, coming from quite an impoverished background, thing that sort of links in with me is childhood obesity and poverty, and the links like that, and seeing how the working with the library sort of unlocks that, the blood pressure monitor things, I think is a really good thing. So really I had no question. It was just, I just want to say well done. I think this is a great thing that you've done.
But thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate it wasn't a question, but just some observations. So the Summer Reading Challenge, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's an amazing thing, really, and there's plenty of research behind it that actually underpins the fact that it does improve educational attainment, because previously, you know, lots of children kind of fall off a cliff at the end of the term, and then they're fallen behind by the time they go back to school in September. So there's a kind of bit of hard research behind that, which actually goes back to the 1980s, actually, around attainment. But so it's both fun and it's kind of, you know, beneficial as well. And you're right, we try to build on it through other activities. It's a hook, really. I mean, at the moment, we're going into school, colleagues are going into schools to kind of introduce the Summer Reading Challenge and really queue up the children, get them excited, because obviously, ultimately, when it comes to the holiday itself, we're dependent on the parents bringing, you know, particularly young children to the library. So, and the kind of direction of travel in terms of participation since the pandemic is climbing each year, which is really encouraging. And thank you also for your comments about the public health dimension. I mean, I know when we were taking the strategy as part of developing it into different management teams, I could see a real benefit from going to public health, for instance, where we all had a pre-existing relationship with them in terms of the community health information service, but it kind of brokered a wider conversation. And on the back of that, we were successful in securing the funding for the blood pressure monitor scheme. And I'm hoping that's, the first of a number of things. It feels like a kind of a really beneficial and optimized relationship. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And as you obviously, I've already commented on this work with the outreach work with schools is just so important, and actually getting people inspired or children inspired to read and continuing that over the summers, continuing that for the rest of their life is such an important thing. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good to see you, Gary. As you know, I do frequent Huntingdon Library quite a bit, and if we weren't meeting here today, I'd probably be there now, although I think they're closed on Thursday afternoon, so that's how well I know it. But I agree with you about the Summer Reading Challenge, and one of the nicest things you do as a councillor is when they've done their bit in the autumn, get to give them their medals or certificates, young people, and they really enjoy it. They're really motivated. Something I'd like to see talking about opening hours is the I think it's called the Open Plus scheme, which piloted in St Ives many years ago and worked really well. And something I've been requesting for some time for Huntingdon, but the library does have 2 levels, so it's a bit more difficult, but allowing people access with safeguards in place when the library's not actually open per se. I don't know if there's any more work we can do around that. I know it's going to be quite costly though, isn't it? And we did look a few years ago, but perhaps weren't at that stage back then.
Yeah, the Open Plus is still something we're actively doing. So we recently added it to Camborne Library, and where we can redesign a library with it in mind, we are using it. But like you said, it does involve costs. So we're likely to use it in the Darwin Green as a brand new library, but it's not suitable everywhere. So we'd point to other options like Lisa said. So in East Barnwell, we're going to be working with Abbey people, and that work, when that new centre opens, that they're going to have free access to the library building to help run code clubs and lots of things that are consistent with the library offer, and that'll help keep that building used and better achieve sort of our outcomes. And similarly, as we do currently in Ramsey Library, where the Neighbourhood Trust open the building a day a week, and they'll run job clubs, they'll run all sorts of bits and pieces. So Open Plus is still on the cards, but it's definitely one of the options. It's not the only option in town. So we're sort of trying to find the most effective use of our funds to deliver the most hours.
Thank you for that, members. Anything else, Councillor Thornhill?
Thank you. Just a quick question about the challenges of libraries at the moment. I was just thinking about social media and things like that, and so I was just wondering about the numbers people going to libraries now, and is part of the thinking behind the strategy, providing extra services and bringing people into the libraries. Is that part of this thinking? Yeah, because I think what you're trying to do is great, by the way. So.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think I would always describe the library service here as a kind of mass participation service, really. Not that there's plenty of room for growth, but I think we have 100,000 active members. That's people using their card, regularly in a 12-month period. We have sort of north of 1 million visits a year. So, participation rates are high. I think that in terms of, notwithstanding those are big numbers, that's still the majority of people who aren't using our services. So built into the strategy is a marketing work stream to develop a marketing plan, which will be around targeting non-users, but particularly non-users in communities where we perceive there to be high need but low levels of use. So that's something that is hardwired into the delivery plan.
See if you wanted to come back.
Well, I really wanted to come back with a bit of a statement rather than a question. We seem to have moved into the debate as to whether we should go along with these recommendations. And what I was going to do originally, at any rate, is to launch into some long speech about the importance of libraries throughout history. But I'll spare you all that. I mean, we could talk about the Great Library of Alexandria and the libraries of Ephesus, which part of which still exists. These are magnificent historical buildings that were centres of learning, but of course they're now part of our cultural history, and that's really true to this day. The British Library, the Library of Congress, all these are magnificent places and architectural wonders of the world. We don't necessarily have such architectural wonders in Cambridgeshire, although I'm very impressed with the ones that I've seen. Central Library, it's a very, very comprehensive building. St Neots, perhaps a little less so, but it does the job. But what I was going to say is that more importantly today, they are indeed seen as the hub of inner city or high street regeneration. And that is a role that they can play in becoming the centre of life for our settlements here. And I mean, that's really what we have to aim for. And I want to particularly say just two things. So I'm winding up, Chair. I'm not going to go on much longer. There are two things that are, one happening currently, one that may happen potentially. One is the Library Presents, which I really think is a magnificent programme. Obviously, I would say that. I'm very much supportive of it. There's a great programme coming up in the next 6 months, and there will be a programme for the year after as well. Really interesting things which the whole community in all its diverse nature can get involved in. And I'd really like to see that rolled out a little bit more if we can find the money and the resources. Very, very important. We must continue to support that. And of course, some of you, well, I hope all of you will know that I think St Ives, Huntingdon and St Neots have submitted a bid for the Town of Culture for 2028. And we don't know yet if we're going to be, or any of them are going to be shortlisted. If any one of them shortlisted, I mean, there will be an incredible programme of work to develop further the bid for the final selection. But I believe that libraries will play a critical part in that. They are indeed, the centre of our culture in so many ways. So, I mean, I'm really saying that we should continue to support this strategy. I think the review that is being proposed should continue and is very, very important. But we should make them and ensure that they are the centre of regeneration efforts. Does that help?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm wholeheartedly behind all of this, and I have to say that I've been very fortunate to visit Ephesus and actually see what remains of the library there. And you just sort of think it's a pity the documents that were there were lost, because it would have just been so amazing to have seen the sheer amount of culture that would have actually brought to us. And in terms of our estate, I was very fortunate to visit Rock Road Library recently, 90 years old, our oldest purpose-built library. I believe it's the oldest in the country of purpose-built library run by a county council. So really quite spectacular that we've got buildings like that. Anyway, Councillor Boulat.
Thank you, Chair. And you'll be pleased no one start a debate as to which Huntingdonshire Market Town is the best, but I wish everyone best of luck in their respective bids. I want to comment briefly on the focus on improving developer contributions, because I think it's a very serious issue. There's massive growth planned around, in Cambridgeshire. And I think it would be very good to get some more detail as to how we can further press for better contributions, because developers should contribute more in general towards community facilities, including libraries. And I know there are many discussions around planning on that as well. But I think it would be good to maybe have a briefing as to what can we realistically do to advocate for that, because I think with the level of growth planned, it's really important we get this right for the communities, because we don't want more and more developments with no community facilities whatsoever. On that point, I want to mention, I think Lisa mentioned about the family hubs, and obviously there's some investment around potential youth hubs, youth buildings across the county in the next years. And also there are other programs that focus on this co-location of services. I think one of the issues when you speak about limited opening hours or the difficulty to make the business case for buildings is because in many buildings there are not as many services at once. The East Barnwell example is a good one of co-locating services. There are many others, and I think there's a real opportunity with family hubs and some of the central government investment around some of the youth activities to think about that co-location of services more. And in that sense, it would be good to get some examples of where do we do effective co-location of services so far in our buildings, and which buildings would benefit perhaps more working with other services around, with potential local businesses or others, to actually make the building viable to be open for longer. But I really welcome the strategy, and especially the focus on how can we increase developer contributions, because I think that's really, really needed. Thank you.
Councillor Emery-Holman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Gary and Andrew and all your colleagues for all your hard work on this strategy. The last year has been a delight with various visits to various libraries, and it's been fantastic to see not only the range of opportunities, activities we offer, and I had a bit of a scare actually with the blood pressure monitor at Camborne, but notwithstanding that, it's been a real privilege to be involved in this, and the work to bring this strategy forward has been excellent. One thing that I don't think we've mentioned today is mobile libraries, but having quite some smaller rural parishes in mine and Councillor Fane's division, I know what a valuable service they are, so it's great to see the commitment to continuing those in the strategy. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit more detail in the context of LGR on the rationale behind the timeframe of the strategy, and also if you have any insight you can offer into how libraries may look, given that we will have Peterborough joining one of the unitary authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the rationale behind 29 was we took a steer both from yourselves and from senior leadership team within the council. So, that's really the thinking, that there will be a period of uncertainty or a period of change, so that it doesn't go off a cliff on April 2028. So really that's the rationale around that. In terms of Peterborough, I'm aware that Peterborough is actually developing its own library strategy at the moment. And I did have an opportunity to meet with the person that's working on that last week to share our strategy and trying to do my best to try and sort of suggest that they might want to align where possible, not least in terms of the timescale. So I think that's an open dialogue that we've got with them. I think the only caveat I would add is that Peterborough is in a very different place as a library service. I mean, I think they're much more around at the moment trying to root a basic core service and sustain that, so that they're not in a position at the moment, from my knowledge of that service, and certainly from speaking to the colleague over there, that they're not as far advanced in terms of developmental thinking as we are. But we'll keep the dialogue open with them, obviously, right now, between now and the run up to LGR.
Thank you. Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just wanted to say how welcome it would be to extend and, if possible, regularise the library opening hours, which are quite variable. I think most of us, our libraries would be closed today, Thursday, but open at various hours during the week, and many of us have been caught out by not being able to remember quite which hours they're open for on which day. And I think that would help very much. The other thing that may be seen as a secondary but also important function of libraries, particularly in the current conditions, is, of course, a number of us are looking for cool rooms, which are very important, not only to elderly people, but also in some cases, I don't know how many schools are actually having to limit their hours, but that can be very important. We're going to clearly see the fact of which we're literally insulated from in here today, very pleasant as it is, but we're going to see longer and longer periods when this is a real challenge. And of course, in winter too, there are periods when elderly people in particular may be looking for warm rooms where they can not only keep warm, but also enjoy some social facility. And libraries can play an important role in that. And I wondered whether any of that might be relevant to this programme.
I'll pick up some of this. So in terms of cool rooms, we have literally yesterday put out a social media post of which libraries do have air conditioning. Unfortunately, it is not the entire estate, as you can imagine. So I think we're a little wary of advertising those libraries that may have to close due to extreme heat. But yeah, it's definitely something we do. And the Warm Hubs is a standard offer across all our libraries. So that's been so successful where we're doing provide tea and coffee that many of the libraries are now running it throughout the year. So it's not just about the staying warm, it's about that social engagement. I know the Central Library, for instance, has been doing a lot of work with the homeless population there that have been using it, getting them into board games, engaging, providing that social interaction. So it's been a really positive step. That was originally funded by Public Health, but something we've been able to sustain for the last 2 years. And yeah, really happy to say every library is a warm hub. If not quite yet, every library is a cool hub.
Just on the opening hours point, yeah, I think really it goes back to what Lisa was saying earlier on. I think the key to it, given our finite resources, and the resources will always be finite, I think the key to extending access is that partnership working. So at Cherry, for instance, you know, the opening hours there are enabled through a partnership with the Community Benefit Society there. They do have Open Plus access, but it's really, I think that's the key to it for us to expand hours, particularly at the smaller libraries, which have the more limited opening hours, is partnership really, rather than kind of core staffing, which is, you know, unlikely to be feasible. Thank you.
Thank you for all of that. I see no other indications of desire to speak. So we'll go to the recommendations to adopt the Future Library Service Strategy 26-29 as set out in Appendix 1 and adopt the new service levels as set out in Appendix 5 of the Future Library Strategy. Are we all happy to do so? Anyone against? Take that as unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gary and Andrew, for your presentation. And I look forward to being out there. I'm hoping to get along to some of the Library Presents things as well. Very, very exciting opportunities that we've got. And for anyone who doesn't know, do look at it. Providing, you know, live entertainment at very low prices is an incredible opportunity for everybody to see that, you know, to have an opportunity to be there for live entertainment. Thank you. Okay, our next item is the Armed Forces Covenant, and it will be presented by the Armed Forces Covenant Partnership Coordinator, Tommy Kelly, and Community Service Manager, Adam Garford. Gentlemen, welcome today. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for the opportunity to introduce this report today. So the paper sets out Cambridgeshire County Council's ongoing commitment to supporting our armed forces community and seeks your approval for the council to formally sign the Armed Forces Covenant. As members will be aware, the Covenant is a national commitment to ensure that those who serve or who have served in the armed forces, as well as their families, are treated fairly and are not disadvantaged in accessing public services. It reflects the significant contribution that service personnel, veterans and their families make to our communities. In Cambridgeshire, this is particularly relevant. We have a strong armed forces presence across the county, including a significant veteran population. We know that service partners sacrifice a lot of the freedoms others enjoy, and service children can face disruption to their education due to mobility requirements of service life. While many service leavers make successful transitions to civilian life, occasionally individuals and their families face additional challenges, particularly in areas such as housing, education, healthcare and employment. This report sets out how we are responding to that locally. It is also timely that we bring this forward during Armed Forces Week. Earlier in the week, we marked this by raising the Armed Forces flag at New Shire Hall, an important moment of recognition and appreciation. But beyond that symbolic, this report is about ensuring that our support is consistent, practical, and embedded across the organisation. Members will also know that this is an area where the Council already demonstrates strong leadership. We were recently re-accredited with the Ministry of Defence's Employer Recognition Scheme Gold Award, the highest level of recognition for employers supporting the armed forces community. Having first achieved gold in 2020, this revalidation reflects a sustained commitment across our policies, practices and culture. It recognises the work we are doing to remove barriers, support colleagues with service backgrounds and create an inclusive workplace. What we are presenting today builds on that strong foundation. At this point, I'll hand you over to Tommy, who will take you through the action plan and a detailed underpinning of this work.
Thank you, Adam. This report sets out the development of a comprehensive set of Armed Forces Covenant commitments underpinned by a wide-ranging action plan. The action plan brings together activity across numerous council services into a more coordinated, structured and strategic approach. Importantly, this work goes beyond meeting our statutory duties. The many officers who have contributed to developing the action plan have shown considerable thought and creativity in identifying how relatively small changes within their services can make a meaningful difference to members of the Armed Forces community. Not only has the planning approach delivered a wide understanding of the Armed Forces Covenant and community, but it's also provided leads with a level of ownership over the work. One example is the support being offered by the Library Service to veterans through assistance with the Veterans Badge applications. While this is a relatively simple initiative, it provides a visible demonstration of the County Council's commitment to the Armed Forces community. Initiatives such as this may not be transformative on their own, but they help reinforce the message that our commitment to the Covenant is about more than compliance or a box-ticking exercise. Under the Armed Forces Act 2021, the Council is already required to have due regard to the Covenant principles when delivering key services such as housing, education and healthcare. Looking ahead, the Armed Forces Bill 26 is expected to extend these duties further. Much of the work in the action plan will ensure that the Council is positioned to meet these anticipated future requirements. It has therefore been designed both to ensure compliance with current legislation and to prepare for anticipated changes while embedding consideration for the Armed Forces community across our day-to-day activities and decision-making. The action plan focuses on strengthening how we identify and respond to the needs of the Armed Forces community, improve awareness of and access to services, embed Covenant principles across service areas, and work effectively with partners across the county. It also reflects our role within the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Armed Forces Covenant Partnership, through which we contribute to wider system leadership, collaboration and shared learning. Alongside this, the report proposes strengthened governance and oversight arrangements to ensure delivery is effectively monitored, progress remains transparent, and our commitments are translated into tangible outcomes for the Armed Forces community. I'll now hand you back to Adam to conclude.
Thank you, Tommy. So overall, this is about fairness, inclusion, and ensuring that no one is disadvantaged because of their service. I would therefore encourage committee to support the recommendations set out in the report, and I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions, comments, debate around this? Councillor Thornhill.
Thank you. Just wanted to just quickly ask about, you mentioned housing, and I'm just wondering whether veterans are getting the prioritisation that they need.
Yeah, through the HomeLink system, there are a number of conditions or a number of support elements that support the Armed Forces community. For instance, banding dates are backdated by the amount of years served, which helps people have the same, or help service people have the same level of access to the housing as if they were able to live here, unlike as they're not, because they're moving around with service. Also, local connection criteria has been removed as well, so service people can leave the forces and apply anywhere in the country, and that's forever now. It used to be a 5-year cap on that, but that's forever now, and they can't be knocked back due to lack of local connection.
And have you seen any challenges there in terms of, is it actually happening? The fact that you can be anywhere, you could originally
certainly, yeah.
Yeah,
we're linked in with the officers that manage the HomeLink system. We can see how many veterans that we've got on there because it's being asked at that point. So we understand those numbers and that those support elements are being enforced.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Are the veterans aware of the services that are available to them? Because I know some come out of service and they just sort of don't know where to go. Just wondering what is in place to help them transition into civvy life.
Sure, thank you. Yes. We have the Career Transition Partnership, which is run by READ currently, which is the mechanism for service leavers to prepare for civilian life. CTP through READ are on the partnership board, so they are able to pass on the understanding of what's on the ground in Cambridgeshire. We have space on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Insights platform, so we have a small corner of that where we've built support pages, mapped local services. I'm constantly posting out to the 20 or so social media platforms that we have for the armed forces community across Cambridgeshire. So constantly banging the drum. Not everyone's hearing it, so continue to bang it.
Yeah, no, I worked for Capalc for a while, so I was aware of what you do, which I have to say is fantastic, that what you are doing, because I think when veterans come out of service, they just don't know where to go to because they've not been used to being in civilian life. So well done for what you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dennery-Homan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Tommy and Adam for this report. I mean, it's brilliant work. I think the reception the Armed Forces motion got at full council last time really shows that this is something that every single member in this council is strongly behind. And there's so many brilliant parts of the covenant document. I'm going to pick one out. I'm quite intrigued as to the relationship with Grafham Water Centre. Are you able to expand on what that offer is, please, Tommy?
Yes, working with Ed Groom, the Business Development Manager at Grafham Water Centre, we're having conversations with SAFA, Soldier Sailors Airmen's Families Association, Walking with the Wounded, and we're looking at grants that we can apply for to support our service families, service children, veterans. We were looking at veterans from minority groups. We were looking at LGBTQ plus veterans and working with the organisations that support those cohorts. As yet, we're still in conversations about how we can, or the best grants that we can apply for, but we have good engagement through our partnership board with the working units, the community development officers and unit welfare officers across Cambridgeshire. So as soon as we, want to start developing a programme, we'll have their buy-in from that stage. But I know Grafham Water have already supported through the Communities Fund within RAF Whitton some activity for service families on site. So it's conversations Ed Grimm and I are constantly having because we want to use that resource. It's a fantastic resource if we can get funding for that, for further activities, then that's why we've mentioned it in the document itself.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. I know the answer to this because we were talking about it the other day when I was in the building, actually, the day we did the Armed Forces flag, which raised the Armed Forces flag, which I was very privileged to do on behalf of the Chair of the Council. People who do national service or have done national service, obviously they're quite elderly now, but they can also use the Armed Forces Covenant, can't they? And I only found this out because one of my own relatives fell into that category, and his response to me was, well, I only did national service, but my reply was, well, you still did it and you had to do it. So no reason why you can't benefit from Armed Forces Covenant policies as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Anyone who does one-day service, or as a regular or reservist or national service, is considered to have veteran status. So under the Covenant, they fall under that support.
Members, any other points? Anything else? No? I think it's been incredibly positive. I think you've seen that this council is committed, and it will be good to get to that stage of actually seeing real things being delivered on this. So thank you both for being here today. We are being asked to approve the council's formal sign-up to the Armed Forces Covenant, reaffirming its commitment to supporting serving personnel, veterans and their families, Note the Council's existing statutory duties under the Armed Forces Act 2021 requiring due regard to be given to the covenant principles in the exercise of all relevant functions, and the anticipated extension of these duties through the Armed Forces Bill 2026, and support the establishment of appropriate governance and oversight arrangements to ensure compliance with current and forthcoming legislation. Once again, I haven't seen anyone indicate that they're against this, so hopefully everyone is in favour. Is there anyone who wishes to vote against this? In which case I'll take that as unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. I think this is really important. Thank you.
Bro, thank you all.
Right, that brings us to item 9, which is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy, which will be presented by the Service Director of People and Culture, Lindsay Fulcher. Lindsay, welcome. Allow you to get yourself sorted out.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. My first time at this committee, so thank you for inviting me along today. For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to meet before, as mentioned, I'm Lindsay Fulcher, I'm Service Director for People and Culture. I'm joined today by Sheena Lucas, who is the Council's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Business Partner, who's leading this piece of work, so is here to accompany me today. So I'm pleased to be able to provide you with an update on progress towards the Council's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. This is one of the Council's key enabling strategies, so it helps the Council to achieve its vision and priorities, and does this through the 3 themes of workforce, communities and services. So in terms of the background, this is one of a number of update reports that have been presented to this committee, so you will already be aware of our requirements under the Public Sector Equality Duty. And the EDI strategy not only outlines how we are working towards achieving our requirements under this duty, but also how we go above to embody equality and diversity as a community leader, as a service provider and a large employer in our region. So if I can take you down to the main issues in the report, please. You'll see a summary of the progress against the 86 actions in the EDI strategy action plan. That action plan is outlined in full in the appendix. This will look slightly different from the update you received previously, as we've had a whole-scale review of the actions. And this is to make sure that we're on track with them all, and also to consider the impact that LGR may have on the actions that we have planned. So I'm pleased to report that of the 86 actions, we've now evidenced that none of these are behind schedule. All of them are in progress, with 62 either completed and closed, or the action's been achieved and it's now moved to being monitored rather than actively working towards. And this is a really big achievement, and you'll see in the following summary and a few things that I'll highlight in a moment, that the work is not just undertaken by our very small EDI team, but it is embedded in services across the whole council, and that's represented in some of the reports that you've previously seen in this meeting, in fact. So since the previous report, in the theme of communities, a few things I wanted to highlight. We've worked with partner organisations to strengthen safe spaces and educational policies for young LGBTQ+ people in our communities. Through the Crisis and Resilience Fund that you heard about earlier in the meeting today, we've increased the support for residents most impacted by the cost of living. We've been awarded Council of Sanctuary status, and I know that some of you were able to attend a celebration of this during Refugee Week last week. We've weaved equality data into public health decision making to better service provision in this area. And one example of where this has had a real positive impact in our communities is the ability to target smoking cessation services to homeless individuals. And then another example of joining equality data up with the work being carried out across multiple council teams is the Warm Homes pathway that public health and community development and resilience teams are working on, and was mentioned by officers earlier in the meeting today. So taking you down to some of the service achievements, we're developing a new KPI, key performance indicator, relating to equality, diversity and inclusion in the new home care service contracts. That gives us better insight and the ability to ensure that all residents receive equitable service from this contract. We're working with services to upskill them and support them with the Council's Equality Impact Assessment process, and you see a number of those in the pack of the information that you have for committee meeting today. And then following the Council motion last year, we've supported the proposal to apply the universal design principles, so those principles that originally came from kind of place and architecture space, but woven them into all developments of our websites, spaces and environments. And then finally, within our theme of workforce, the things I wanted to highlight in particular this period are our continuing focus on the Council's commitment to anti-racism. We're working with to embed the Council's approach to our care experience colleagues and applicants, and we've seen a real positive increase in the number of candidates who have disclosed to us that they are care experienced. The Council's violence and aggression guidance has been promoted, and I know that similar guidance has also been circulated around to members. And then the final point I wanted to make is that we're really pleased that the targeted work we've taken to increase our disclosure rates within our employees and our colleagues continues to be a success. And we've seen increases with colleagues completing their disclosure rates within each of the characteristics that we ask information about. And that's really positive because that gives us some real impact on a lot of the things that we review and that we bring to you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lindsay. If I can just ask one question. When we talk about an EDI strategy, you know, there are lots of comments in the public about what this actually means. To me, this is about breaking down the barriers that prevent the best people from being able to achieve their best. The best people being able to get the right job, so that we have the right people or the best people we can possibly have. A lot of comments have said that this is about advantaging people so that it is the wrong people who are getting housing, for example, and things like this. Can you just confirm to me that this is about ensuring that the right people, you know, we're taking down barriers, not advantaging people?
Yes, I'm very happy to confirm that, Chair. So this is one of our enabling strategies, as I mentioned earlier, and sits very closely alongside our people strategy. And the two things very much go hand in hand to make sure that we can recruit the right people within Cambridgeshire County Council to the right roles to do the right things for our community. And obviously, you know, you will all be aware more than anyone else, the diversity of people within the communities, the needs that they have. We've heard in the earlier reports that came to committee today, where actually everything we've outlined here is being developed by our services. We have a very, very small equality, diversity and inclusion team because the work is embedded within the services across the whole of the council because it impacts upon all of our residents. So if we make sure that we get this right and this strategy sits alongside the people strategy, all of the things we talk about from what Tommy talked about earlier in terms of the Armed Forces Covenant to our care experienced, you know, individuals within our communities, we're considering everybody. It's not just those with particular characteristics, really is diversity of the whole of our community.
Thank you, because this is often something which seems to be forgotten. Also, things like the Equality Act actually protects every single person. It's not about advantaging small groups, but actually protecting every single person. Thank you for confirming that. Members, over to you. Councillor Seif.
Thank you. Great report, great strategy. No problem with that. But what I wanted to ask was, in practice, I mean, are we, and this may not be the place for it because we're talking about developing a strategy, but are we getting complaints from various organisations within and without where the strategy perhaps is not in place yet, or people are not observing it? I mean, what is actually happening in practice? I'm thinking particularly of HR. Are we abiding by it, and are staff recognising it and responding, or are we still getting complaints? Sorry, that's...
Yeah, I'm happy to come in on that one. To be honest, that's always a difficult one to answer, because if we think about it from a workforce perspective, if we create an organisation where people are happy to raise concerns, an increase in the number of concerns being raised can often be seen as a positive. But obviously there's a balance with that. So I think, yes, we, from an internal perspective, from a workforce perspective, I think we have a fairly healthy level of complaints, as you call them, in terms of people raising concerns being investigated and being looked into. Sheena and her team work very closely. They sit within people and culture, so within my directorate, but they work very closely with the operational HR teams to look at whether or not there are particular trends in our employee relations cases. So our grievances, for example, being raised by certain people with certain protected characteristics time and time again. Is there anything we can learn from that? So we monitor all of that information. In terms of the external focus, I think it is very much a case of we do what we can to roll, as we said earlier, roll EDI into everything that we do across the council within all of our services. We do get huge amounts of freedom of information requests in relation to EDI areas. I think that keeps Sheena fairly busy in answering some of those. But I don't think that we are, unless Sheena disagrees, I don't think we see any particular areas in which we've got problems, to be honest.
I think you're absolutely right that you would always expect there to be a level of background complaints, and it's actually identifying whether there are things there. It's when you don't get complaints actually that you know you've got more of a problem. People are too scared to actually bring things forward, and when you have that kind of culture, then you've got a real problem. So it's good to hear that balance. Members, any other points or comments on this? Councillor Bulat.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I think it's actually good we're putting the figures in the report, because I think like the public perception is often that like millions and millions are actually spent on EDI teams and officers, and actually putting in there that is 0.025 of expenditure is actually putting this into context and perhaps unpacking some of the more toxic narratives we see on this online or otherwise. I just wanted to congratulate the team on all the work, especially around recently Refugee Week, having the flag raising ceremony. Like I attended the County of Sanctuary event at Cambridge Central Library, and it was really nice to see work that was ongoing for like a number of years, starting with Emotion, really coming together and seeing everyone there, including people from the Hong Konger community, Ukrainian community, and many other communities there. It was really a good moment because you feel that something is actually done in practice and everyone comes together. At the same time, I have noticed a lot more opposition to like whether it's any type of council, raising a certain type of flag. And I just want to put on the record, it's possible to be very proud to be British and fly proud of the Union Jack, and to actually recognize that there's some groups that need at least discussing whether we agree or not. I think it doesn't cost too much to just be decent in how we comment about those issues. And I have to say that like for me, because I'm used to a lot of the negative comments, I'm not affected, but I see so many of my colleagues, especially on town councils or other councils, many of them first time in politics, many of them part of those communities, and I see how it affects them, the narrative affects them, and I do want to actually encourage more people in politics who are from underrepresented groups, including migrant communities and LGBT communities, and I feel we should persist with this work, because not doing this work means that we leave the room to just have negativity on this, which we should oppose. I think just want to say this because being involved, especially in Refugee Week events, it can often be quite difficult to get all that backlash, but I think it's just important to be persistent and thank everyone who worked on this, because I know many of you have gotten those comments as well, so thank you all.
Thank you for that, and I have to say I was disappointed that I was actually out of the country for the refugee event, but having actually had to previously cancel the that holiday, which was actually a celebration of our civil partnership, because of attending council events, I was unfortunately not going to cancel it again. But it is, and thank you for those comments, because I think most of us do agree with what was said there. Members, any other points that you wish to raise on this? If not, as Councillor Damari Homan.
Just briefly, I was able to attend the Council Sanctuary event, a fantastic event, you know, and just want a big thanks to Ashraf for all his work there. I'm really pleased to see that we continue to work on that side of things. There is so much that I could praise in this report. I appreciate we don't have long before we have to take a break or wrap up the meeting, so I shall leave it for another day. But thank you very much for this and all your ongoing work. And what I will say is, in the last year, is I have noticed how every single service area embeds these values into their work.
Thank you for that. And I did tell Ashraf off to tell me earlier in future. Okay. If there's no other discussion on this, then we have been asked to review and scrutinise the progress of the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy Action Plan, and I trust that you're satisfied we've done that. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much for both being here today. Okay, we have 11 minutes before we have to take a break, so we will move on to the next one, which is the Corporate Performance Report, which will be presented by Executive Director of Place and Sustainability, Graham Kane, and do feel free to give him a hard time.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your warm welcome. And I look forward to working with all of you, both in this committee, but also in your roles as local members. So good afternoon. The reported performance relates to Q4 of 2025-26 and is summarised in the table at 3.1 of the report. All 10 indicators have been updated for this quarter. As you can see, half of the indicators are green. This includes both of the annual indicators. I shall also highlight KPI 8, all births registered within 42 days of birth, which is currently reported at 96%, currently exceeding the target of 90%. There are 2 amber indicators this quarter, including KPI 3, number of active library users. We've talked a lot about libraries and the wonderful strategy that you've just considered earlier. There was a decline in active users since 2025-26, largely attributed to flooding at Arbory Court and also delays on the Camborne project, which of course is now completed. Individual libraries have seen stable numbers. The good news is that, of course, works at Cottingham, Camborne, Bar Hill, as you mentioned earlier, and Burwell are all complete with celebration events having been held over the last month or so. And Camborne has already seen an increase in active members since it reopened. So that's a demonstration of the investment that the council is making in libraries, as you were discussing earlier. I'll also highlight KPI 4, number of visits made to library sites, because despite the amber performance, there's positive news that following improvements at Cambridge Central, we have seen an additional 2,000 visitors each month. And overall, there's been a slight increase in the number of visitors since the last quarter. The one red indicator relates to the registration of desks within 5 days. The performance reported at Q4 is at 71% against a target of 90%. The reduction in performance relates to an increase in demand and restricted capacity within the team. But a number of management interventions are ongoing to strengthen the team, making it more resilient, with a focus on improving performance over the next quarter. I'll stop there, Chair, and through you, we're very happy to take any questions on the performance report. Thank you.
Members, over to you. Very quiet today. Councillor Tong.
Hello, thank you for this report. It is, as usual, really good, really detailed. Well, the first question I had, let me stop there. I've got 2 interlinked questions about number of active library users on page 6 of the report. Now, recently, or not so recently now, Arbory Court flooded, which obviously had an impact on attendees at the library. Now, I think I remember being told couple of months back that this recovered pretty quickly. Firstly, could I just have a reminder, or I guess an update, but whether that's still the case? Have we seen that sustained use of that library? The other suggestion I had for how we presented the number of active library users is that I'd love your thoughts on this, but might it be helpful when a particular library has, for example, been shut or remain shut, that's factored out of the most recent update to help us relativize. It seems a bit strange if, for instance, Arbory Court shuts, that we are keeping the Arbory Court figures in for every previous update because it throws off the numbers quite heavily. And it might be useful to have an update without those numbers. It could be alongside the numbers we're seeing now, purely to give us a bit more of an accurate perspective. Yeah, there might also be problems with that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. In terms of the second question, I'll ask Lisa if that's all right, if you can take the Arbury Court question. Yeah, I can see the logical argument that you make there. So I think we can reflect on that and see. And perhaps it's not a case of changing the KPI, but when we have these circumstances, perhaps in the narrative, we can explain the detail that you're making a point there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate that, because I think the KPI is really good as it is, but I think it's useful in helping members assess for direction of travel, because I love library users, and I think that seeing the number take a bit of a wobble could be a bit shocking for people. And I think it's quite helpful, because a lot of people, let's be honest, especially people who are just having a skim through the reports, not necessarily members, but members of the public, the graphics are very useful to kind of tell an instant visual story, and it might be useful to keep that consistent.
Thank you. So the question was about the flooding at Arbury Court and the recovery afterwards.
It was just to make sure that the level of usage
it was minimal closure at Arbury Court. The closures that have affected the figures over the last year are far more aligned with the library plus the 1.3 million investment, and the closures of places like Camborne because of the Section 106. But I think we reported to committee last time, I did a briefing note afterwards as well, about the significant increase in use when those sites will reopen. So we see really good recovery.
Just to build on Councillor Tong's point, and thank you for the response, Graham. I personally wouldn't feel entirely comfortable asking officers to remodel the numbers themselves, but I think that suggestion of bringing it into the narrative is very helpful, and then we can extrapolate from that. I think the technical challenge probably isn't worth our convenience on that front. I just wanted to touch on the coroners, Indicator 16 and Indicator 10, sorry, and the live investigations of the Coroner's Service. It's great to see this continue to go down. The Chair and I went for a visit alongside Lisa to Coroner's Court, and it was a fascinating experience. The value of that service cannot be understated, and it's great to see them settling into their new building and just settling as a team at the moment. I know they've had some challenging times, but I think this KPI is a really positive indicator of all their hard work, and it is such an important service for those who've suffered a bereavement and have to go through that process. The compassion and the care that our staff showed them was exemplary. I really couldn't be prouder of what they are doing there. So yeah, I think if any members are interested in Coroner's Court, it is open to the public. It is well worth going out to visit. I would strongly encourage you to do so.
I would reiterate the importance of that, and if you do get an opportunity, it is worth doing. And I think we are so used to adversarial court practices in this country, to see the empathetic nature of how those hearings were actually being held was quite staggering, to be honest with you. And I do encourage, and I think it would be really good for all members to actually have an opportunity to go along and experience what the service is actually doing, because it is something that we have to do. It is an unpleasant service in so many ways, because obviously the things they're looking at, but it really is important, and they're doing a really good job. Councillor Seif, you had...
Yes, a quick query on a subject you've heard me have a rant about on several occasions. As you know, as Chair knows, I'm an accountant, and I think it's important that we should account and use metrics wherever we can. But I have a real problem with some of our KPIs, because obviously most of them are statutory and we have to report against them. But they can be misleading, and they don't necessarily tell the whole story. And the story, for example, that I would want to know about the registration of deaths is, yes, we missed the target quite significantly. Did we miss it by very much? Was it 1 day? Was it 10 days? Or have we got cases which are still unregistered, perhaps for very good reasons? And the thing about registration for death, which we have discussed on previous occasions, is that in certain religions, at any rate, it's very, very important to get an immediate registration so that the burials can take place. And so and we can't go into the detail of that here, but I sort of want to know the impact and indeed just how far we miss the targets. And that really applies to some of the other things. I think we were referring there to library users and so forth. Anyway, that's my point, and I just wonder whether perhaps in the narrative we can have a little bit more, not meat, but explanation and impact.
Yeah, and I think we'll come over in a moment around some of that, but I think that having spoken to some of them, the lengths that they go to make sure that they comply with things like the religious requirements is actually, very, very noteworthy. So they do everything they can to try and accommodate all of those requirements. So there is lots to be said about that, but can I hand over to
Thank you, Chair. I think there's a few elements to your question and comment there. So on the religious events and death registration, just to offer some reassurance on that point, that our coroners actually offer an out of hours service. That's not something that they have to provide, but they do that so that they can help to speed up the registration of deaths and ceremonies related to that. But on your sort of broader point about how far off of the target, how many days after, I think this report is intended to be a snapshot of sort of strategic performance, but it's certainly something that we could take into spokes to provide greater narrative that could be shared back through the parties if that's helpful. And although we are very much focusing on Q4 here, so we are talking about the last year's performance, I suppose it is helpful for me to just draw your attention to some recent feedback that we've had from the General Register Office that tracks and reports our performance over the entire year. And Sarah Abbott, who you'll be familiar with, the Head of Service, before this meeting did update me to say that our performance has been commented on by the GRO in their annual performance feedback report, where they've noted the timeliness across the year improving, and they've praised the service for that. And May's performance on the deaths has actually increased to 80%. So it's all moving in the right direction. Chair, Vice Chair are briefed on some of the work that we are doing around the staffing capacity in the service, because that also has an impact. I think I would also say some key holiday dates like Easter and medical officers that are available over those periods, all of that also has an impact on some of our data. So yes, there is a greater narrative, and we can take some of that into spokes if that's helpful to do so. Thank you.
members, any other comment around this report? And if not, we are being asked to scrutinise and comment on the performance information presented. Are we happy we've done so? Thank you. It is 4:01, so we are required to have a break at this point. So can I suggest that we have a 5-minute break, and we will come back at 6 minutes past, please. I can just say, can we all take our seats, please? Councillor Tong, Councillor Kane. Yeah, I'm sure they will be with us very, very shortly. We won't do anything too drastic. Okay, if we are ready, we will continue with the next item, which is the Outturn Financial Monitoring Report for 25-26, which will be presented by the Executive Director of Place and Sustainability, Graham Kane, and the Strategic Business Partner, Becky Bartram. Welcome, Becky, is here to support with any financial queries. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much, Chair. So paragraph 3.1 of the financial outturn report for 25-26 summarises the main variances to the revenue budget under the responsibility of this committee. They include a net increase of income of 425,000 related to the Homes for Ukraine scheme as a result of arrivals being higher than anticipated, a saving of 268,000 within the Cambridgeshire Local Assistance Scheme, and that was achieved by substituting this budget with funds available from the Household Support Fund. And within the Coroner and Registration Service, there's been an underspend of £290,000, and in addition, a release of £500,000 from an earmarked reserve, contributing towards the organisational-wide effort to balance the Council's budget in 25-26. Within the capital budget, there was an underspend of 500,000, the majority of which was attributed to the Cambridgeshire Priorities Capital Fund. As it says in the report, more details of the variances for capital can be found in Appendix 3, while service level commentaries on the revenue budget can be found in Appendix 2. And of course, Becky, Lisa and I are very happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, members. I think we've discussed quite heavily a lot of the variances at different meetings across the last few months, but quite happy to open this up for any debate or comment on these. No? Everyone quiet today? I think we have actually been through all of this, so I'm not surprised that people are reasonably content with all of this. We're actually asked to review and comment on the finance monitoring report, but I think that, as I say, we have had a lot. I will just give Councillor Tong a moment to ask him if he has any comments on our finance monitoring report outturn for 25-6.
Just
Councillor Damari Homan, over to you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just a quick note. Thank you for the breakdown. I appreciate it's a large service area that you have, Graham, but to have the cosmic parts broken out is really helpful, and look forward to that continuing moving forward.
Okay, I've seen no other comments around from anyone on this, so I'm happy to say that we have reviewed and commented on the finance monitoring report. Find the right line on here. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the financial monitoring report for May 2026, which will also be presented by Graham with Becky's support. Over to you again, Graham.
Thank you very much, Chair. This financial management report reflects the budget position at the end of May 2026. Whilst there is a projected revenue underspend of £1 million across place and sustainability, there is no variance projected for the budgets related to this committee, and therefore nothing further for me to report at this stage. As for capital, there are no updates to provide until the Strategy, Resource and Performance Committee complete the re-baselining exercise at their meeting in July. So at this stage, Chair, I have nothing further to add, but we're, of course, very happy to take any questions.
Okay, again, over to everyone else for any debate on this. Councillor Seif.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the figure, but I can't find it now. Trading standards. Within the last couple of months, I think some additional responsibilities have been placed on trading standards, and with particular regard to corner shops and so forth, convenience shops that are perhaps selling illegal drugs and vapes and so forth. And I just wonder whether our budget, I'm sorry, I haven't got the figure, I'm looking for it in a minute, reflects or what is likely to be an additional requirement pull on their resources, and whether they're going to have to employ additional staff.
I'll ask Lisa to come in on the detail on that. I'm aware of the additional work that's been requested of trading standards teams across the country and the pressure that will put on the teams. I'll ask Lisa if she's got any specific local comments to make on that. Thank you.
The additional funding that we've had confirmed that comes into trading standards for Cambridgeshire is specifically related to the Renters' Rights Act. So we've had £37,000 confirmed for the additional duties in that area, but no other additional funding confirmed so far. We were also in a position, I think you probably recall from previous committees, that Peterborough and Cambridgeshire Trading Standards separated on April the 1st. So the colleagues that were previously employed by Peterborough TUPE'd into Cambridgeshire. So we're also just going through a process of re-establishing all of that baseline staffing, making sure that we've got the right cohort of people in place. So Becky and the finance team have been working with us, and Peter Gell, who's the head of service for Trading Standards, just to make sure that we have got all of that right. And we will, if we need to, bring forward proposals for additional revenue in the future.
Thank you for that, Jeff. So having had some discussions at the District Council as well on forthcoming legislation, I think the Tobacco and Vapes Bill is forthcoming. There are lots of things that are forthcoming that will impact trading standards. Both the Chair and I are in discussion with officers frequently, just to ensure, particularly after the restructure, just to ensure that our team is well looked after. It has, decoupling the services, these things are never easy, but we are monitoring it. And as Lisa says, if we identify a need for additional resource, particularly with more and more responsibilities coming our way, we'll look into that.
Yeah, I'm certainly comfortable that they're managing it as best they can at the moment as things change. And I think it's one of those areas that we're in is constant change, isn't it? But there we are. Members, other points on this report, Councillor Vidlak?
Thank you, Chair. I asked in the previous committee around the overachievement of income on Homes for Ukraine and whether that's needed for additional arrivals or not. So I remember the conversation then that the council offered that as a saving, in-year saving. I wonder if that's still the position, if we're still reviewing, if we anticipate any further need from new arrivals, or if we're just saving that overachievement of income as well.
Thank you for the question. So the information that's presented is obviously related to last year. So for the full data of arrivals for 25-26, we haven't got our Q1 information through yet, but we work through Ashraf Ahmed with the districts on a regular basis to assess how many people have arrived from Ukraine. So really, we'll take it on a quarterly basis to see what that looks like. We would obviously always put the money first and foremost into the services for people. But if there is surplus, if there is an overachievement in terms of what we expect to receive, then we would be having conversations with the corporate leadership team and with Chair and Vice Chair about whether or not to release that as a saving to the council.
Thank you for that response. Members, any other points on here? In which case we're being asked to review and comment on the report, and I think we have done so, and we've given Becky an easy day. I'm sure we can change that at another point. Okay, the final item is the committee's agenda plan and appointments. Are there any comments or questions on the agenda plan from members or officers? No, I'm not seeing anything on there. Could the Democratic Services Officer, Nick Mills, take us through the appointments, please?
Thank you, Chair. The appointments to be made today are set out in appendices 2 to 4, and they include outside bodies, internal groups, and member champion roles. And the previous appointments from the last year will continue for the next municipal year. unless the committee makes any changes to those that are set out in the appendices. Thank you.
So on the appointment of member champions, I understand that Councillor Sarah Kane is going to come off of community safety, and we have a recommendation. I think that Councillor Christine Whelan takes that place. And do we need second approval for that?
No, if the committee is happy with that, unless there are any other nominations, then that's okay.
Are there any other nominations at all on there? Are we all happy with that then? Okay, thank you. And I assume you're still happy to continue in migrant role? Yeah. Okay. Charlotte.
Thank you. Yes, I
Right.
had the Hinchingbrook Country Park joint group. I've just had a conversation with Councillor Sanderson, and he's agreed to step down and let me go on it very kindly, if that's okay. I don't know if I need to, what needs to be done.
Okay, members, if we're happy with that, in which case I'll register that as a no. Yeah, if there's no objection to that, then we can also incorporate that, please, Nick. Okay, in which case, last thing to say is the next committee meeting is scheduled for the 10th of September, although that is a reserve date that is not currently anticipated to be used, in which case the next meeting will be on the 8th of October 2026. Please don't clear that from your diaries quite yet. We will confirm at a later date during July whether or not that is needed. Thank you all for your time today.